Alright, welcome to another painting tutorial. In this one we're going to look at the first of the dwarves from the Escape from Goblin Town set. So I'm looking at Thorin Oakenshield. So here's what he looks like all done. These are the paints I used. Now I followed the painting guide that the Tale of Painters blog put up. So I'm going to have a link to that in the description below. And I'm going to walk you through the steps. I also filmed the whole thing from start to finish. I'm going to show that and commentate that right after I show you which paints go in what areas. So the skin, Cadian flesh tone, and then I used a bloodletter glaze to kind of warm it up a bit. Rhinox hide to shade it, Kislev flesh for highlight, and then Eldar flesh. For the tunic, that's Cantor blue, highlighted by Atlantic blue and Heoth blue. As well as the metal, sort of lead belcher, ironbreaker, runefang combination. For these straps on the boots there, use the fang, Newland oil, rust gray, Fenrisian gray, and the hair is sort of the off black, kind of Baden black, Eschen gray, and Dawnstone. So going to switch over to the other one now. Right, so here I'm putting the base color on for the flesh. Just putting it on pretty sloppy. I did it over top of a dark brown base coat here. So just getting the hands and the face. It's really the only flesh showing. Now we're going to give it a bloodletter glaze. Just doing that quickly with the overall the flesh just to warm it up a little bit. Now I'm using Rhinox hide to do a little bit of shadow around the edges of things, and kind of like a wash, watered it right down. Now I'm starting to do the base coats on the hair, as well as the sort of the cloth showing around the elbows and knees. You'll see that it takes a little bit longer than usual. The painting rig is a bit clumsy to try to paint in all those areas. The guide that I was following started with a black base coat, so they only did a highlight with this. The way I kind of got around that is I used a black wash after to kind of shade this down a bit. So I'm continuing on there. As you can see, trying to get my hand around the top. A lot easier if you're just holding the model steady. Okay, now next I'm going to be moving on here. Okay, so now I'm doing the Keshev flesh, however you pronounce that, just as a highlight. Just also to note, I do go back and touch up in between some of these stages here, just because it's so awkward to try to paint and get the exact detail on this rig that I have set up to keep the guy in the center of the frame. Okay, now I'm doing some of the highlights there. And again, check the beginning of the video for the exact things, or else check the link in my description to the painting blog, Tale of Painters that have published these, and I'm just using their guide, showing you how I paint it through step by step. Now I didn't mention this in the other one, but that Karnak stone, I highlighted all the fur on his boots, sort of in between those straps. Not a big step there. Just adds a little bit of extra color to that area. Okay, now I'm highlighting those straps on the, actually I'm doing the hilt on the blade there, some of the straps on his arms, as well as the ones on his feet. And yeah, those are a little bit fiddly, especially on this painting rig. So I do go back and I wash things, just dark wash to help bring out the detail a bit more, just kind of differentiate where I painted in some of the cracks I didn't mean to. Okay, now I'm using Ironbreaker for base coat for all the silver. Didn't go on that nicely on that sword, so I do a second layer after it kind of dries. Didn't stick on well. I also missed the chainmail on his arms, and I go back and I touch that up later. So if you don't see that done, that's why. But there's some silver showing underneath his tunic, sort of in the front and back. There's the back part I'm doing, and the hilt of that sword on his back. And a couple little details in and around there, his belt. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade all this. So I'm giving it Agrax Earth Shade, just to give it a bit more of a dirty look. And I think I'm going to do just about every area that I've painted so far, just to bring it down a notch, keep it the dirty look, And let's see, do I do the skin? I don't quite remember. Oh, no, but I do the hair. So yeah, there's the hair, and I'm painting right around the edge of the skin to help differentiate that a bit more. Okay, now I'm using a Baden black and some of the mixing medium there, and I'm going in on the chainmail just to help bring out the details. And you can see I've done those the chainmail on the shoulders there. And the idea is just to get inside those cracks to make it look like chainmail rather than just a silver blob. Okay, now using Cantor base for the all the tunic there, just painting that in. And it's going to be a bit on his arms as well, on his back. So nothing too fancy there. Oh, and yeah, the little arm guards on there. I do go back and touch those up a bit because those are, it's kind of fiddly to figure out what parts are his hands, what's the hilt of the sword, and what's the hand guard and all that sort of thing, especially on that little rig. So once I figured that out, I did go back and touch things up. Okay, now I'm using Rune Fang, I believe it is, to highlight all the silver bits. So it's just on his boots there, his the toe caps, and the sword here, and a little bit on some of the armor. They're trying to get some of the details going. Yeah, just trying to pick out as much as I can, make it look nice and shiny. And again, I do touch some of that stuff up off camera. Okay, now I'm using macragge blue for the next highlight. And if some of the colors don't match the thing I showed at the beginning of the video, that's just because the guide that I used used a bit sort of didn't use the bases and layers in the same way that the GW has them all laid out. But it doesn't really matter which ones you use as long as you kind of stay consistent within your own guise. And there's that low-tech, or however you pronounce it, that blue, light blue, just doing that on some of the edges. Trying to pick out different areas and make the folds look decent. And yeah, it's taking a little bit of time. I'm trying to pull out as much of the sort of folds in the fabric as I can, just trying to get them detailed as much as possible. Okay, now I'm doing the textured base, so that's just the Strickland mud, and trying to apply that on there with an old brush and push it in so that I cover up any of the details or the ridges from the slot of base and the slot going in and out there. Okay, and then just doing the rim with the XV88, and that's kind of easy actually on this setup. I go back again just to get that nice and clean. I normally use the other brown, but I thought, hey, my forces of good are going to be different. Okay, so now I'm using an 18-0 liner brush to do the lines there. And so what I've done is I mixed a Baden black with Newland oil, so it's a thin down black but with lots of pigment. And I'm just trying to draw a sort of a diamond pattern on there to give the idea of a pleated tunic. Not pleated, I guess that's like a quilted sort of a look. And that's it. I'm going to go back and show you the finished pictures. Alright, and here's what the guy looks like all done. Here's some just close-up pictures, still images. Just some notes that I didn't show in the other thing. I did paint his eyes with a little bit of white and rhinox hide. And these this detail on this tunic here was just done with thin down a Baden black. And for the base, just some of the texture paint and some static grass and XV88 for around the edge. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Come back, check for more. I'm going to be doing the rest of the dwarves from the box set, as well as Gandalf and Bilbo. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe. See you next time.